Everybody ready? I call the meeting to order of the Marlington Local School District Board of Education, March 26, 2020, special meeting at 7 o'clock. Mr. Knoll, would you have our invocation?
Yeah, thank you, Ms. Gabriel. Before I pray tonight, I just wanted to give a quick shout out to our tech team, Mr. Davis, and all their work to bring all this technology together tonight to allow us to live stream it. And also thanks to the board for allowing myself and my colleagues to be able to remote in for those of us that have some specific issues with family members or loved ones that are vulnerable. We really appreciate the opportunity to be remoted in. So with that, if you'll join me in prayer. Dear Father in heaven, in these difficult times, your word reminds us in Isaiah to not be afraid because you are with us. You're going to strengthen us and help us. I pray a special blessing on this Marlington community, Lord, this time of need. Remind us not to be anxious about anything, to pray, and to remember that you are still in control. I give thanks to our teachers, Lord, for all their work in preparing our online learning materials to continue with teaching and learning. I'm just so proud of them and their efforts, Lord, for our other staff members who are serving lunch and breakfast to our community. So grateful for them, and to our parents and students. We appreciate their patience and willingness to move forward as well with their online learning. Lord, please be with us during this meeting and help us to fear no more. And it's your name we pray. Amen.
Thank you. Would you please rise for the Pledge of Allegiance? I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America, to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty. Mrs. Stevens, would you do the reading of our mission statement?
In collaboration with staff, community, parents, and students, the Marlington Local School District will develop lifelong learners who understand and apply knowledge and demonstrate excellence in pursuing the highest standards with effective intervention to challenge every student.
Thank you. This meeting is a meeting of the Board of Education in public for the purpose of conducting the school district's business and is not to be considered a public community meeting. Katie, could you please call the roll?
Mrs. Gabriel?
Here.
Mr. Hagan?
Here.
Mrs. Humphries? Dr. Mason? Mrs. Stevens?
Here.
Adoption of the meeting agenda. Are there any additions or corrections? Hearing none, is there a motion that the Marlington Local Board of Education adopt the following agenda for the March 26, 2020 meeting?
So moved.
Josh?
Second.
And Daniel, second. Any discussion? Please call the roll.
Mrs. Gabriel?
Yes.
Mr. Hagan?
Yes.
Mrs. Stevens?
Yes.
Motion approved 3-0.
Is there any old business? Moving to new business, is there a motion to limit the attendance to the number of attendees 10 allowable per the guidance of the governor of the state of Ohio and the Ohio Department of Health?
So move.
Second.
Is there any discussion? Please call the roll.
Mrs. Gabriel?
Yes.
Mr. Hagan?
Yes.
Mrs. Stevens?
Yes.
Motion approved 3-0.
Is there a motion to approve holding a meeting in the location, which is the DLZ, that allows room enough for attendees to socially distance themselves from each other?
So moved.
Second.
Is there any discussion? Please call the roll.
Mrs. Gabriel?
Yes.
Mr. Hagan?
Yes.
Mrs. Stevens?
Yes.
Motion approved 3-0.
Next on the agenda is facilities. PlugSmart will have a facilities presentation. I'll let them introduce themselves and continue the presentation.
Thank you. First, I just want to thank everyone for allowing us to present tonight. We've spent the last number of weeks, 4 to 5 weeks here on site, walking the buildings and looking for opportunities for facility improvements. My name is Will Litwin. I'm Vice President of Project Development for PlugSmart. With me is Jarrett Kelly, our Director of Engineering. For those that aren't familiar with PlugSmart, just want to give a 30,000-foot view of who we are, what we do. We're an Ohio-based company. We have offices in Columbus, Cincinnati, Dayton, and Cleveland. We're an energy services company, and we specialize in developing self-funding energy projects. And what that means as a project developers, we do all the design, the engineering, the project management, and the material procurement, but we don't pull wire or turn a wrench. So it gives us the unique ability to partner with local trusted subcontractors and material providers for the designs that we implement. Couple items about us: we're vendor neutral. Gives you guys subcontractor choice. We do open book pricing on our projects, and we offer energy savings guarantees as part of our projects as well. Next slide. We at PlugSmart have a lot of history in the region. Not only have we worked with Marlington schools on 2 different projects within the last 6 years, we also work regionally with North Canton schools, Carrollton schools, Stone Monroe Falls City schools, among others. Our relationship with the district first started about 6 years ago on an energy efficiency project to address rooftop units that were at end of life at the middle school. We were able to achieve that, take advantage of a number of grants and rebates that were available at the time as well. And more recently, we were part of the project that brought air conditioning and new windows to the high school here. About 4 or 5 weeks ago, Mr. Knoll reached out and asked us to take a look at the 3 elementary schools. And so that's what I'm going to kick it over to Jarrett with now, and he'll walk you through what our findings were.
Thank you, Will. So yeah, scope of work here, as you can see, the buildings that we're focused on are Marlboro, Lexington, and Washington. And really the intent of our assessment was to look at building infrastructure, specifically the lighting, HVAC with a focus on adding cooling, and then also the building envelope. So we're going to jump right into the measures. We're going to start with the LED lighting. So I'm going to walk through this table at the top, and that'll be consistent throughout the presentation. The first section there is kind of an abbreviated version of the name of each school. So Marlboro, Lexington, Washington. So this would be which buildings the scope that we're talking about pertains to. So in the case of LED lighting, this would address all 3 of those buildings. The next section there, measure investment. We provide a range on the measure investment. And so traditionally the way we've contracted with Marlington in the past is that we would contract the max. That would be a guaranteed maximum not to exceed number. And then any buyout savings we're able to achieve would go 100% back to the district. And so we would expect that investment to fall somewhere between the 157 and 185. Again, we would run a competitive bidding process on the district's behalf. Any labor or material numbers that come in under that budget, again, would go back to the district. On the next section, utility rebate, unfortunately, with the changes to the utilities rebate programs in Ohio, specifically with First Energy, we thought it was best to show that as 0 for now. Those programs will be going away, and so we think the likelihood of procuring those for this project is pretty low, and so we've shown that as 0 for the time being. The next categories there, utility savings, would be a reduction, in this case, with lighting in wattage or runtime. And so that would be a direct reduction on your utility bills across the 3 buildings. O&M is operations and maintenance. So with lighting, I think this is easy to envision or kind of understand where these savings come from. Obviously with LED, the run times and the life of the lamps, we're seeing anywhere between 80 and 100,000 hours with anywhere between 5 and 10-year warranties. And so those are costs that you have maintaining your existing lighting system that will go away in terms of lamp replacements, ballast replacements, that type of thing. And so we've quantified that from a material standpoint. We have not factored in any labor because we don't anticipate that you'll be laying people off. If you were to do this upgrade, they'll just be able to work on other things, and you won't have that time investment in the lighting. So those 2 add for the total savings, and then we give you a simple payback range based on the investment range. With respect to the lighting, we audited almost 1,800 fixtures across the 3 buildings. The district has performed some LED upgrades. And so what we're proposing here is to address any fixtures that haven't been upgraded. Any non-LED lights would be upgraded to LED. Typically, we like to look at a couple different options, one being a new fixture option. With these 3 buildings, we felt the retrofit path was the best because of the concern with asbestos. And so if we were to start to go down the path of new fixtures, we would have to get into the ceiling, and that would obviously drastically increase the cost with the asbestos abatement. We have proposed occupancy sensors in select areas, mostly gymnasiums and restrooms throughout the buildings. And then it's important to note too that this includes the exterior, which is new fixtures, as well as the emergency lighting. So we would be installing new emergency lighting systems throughout these buildings. That doesn't have any savings associated with it. So this is typically, we see a little better payback, but because of the emergency lighting, that's an investment that doesn't have savings. The payback is a little bit higher than what we would typically see. Next slide, just some pictures of some of the fixtures that we saw throughout the 3 buildings. You can see there's quite a variation in the fixture style, the lamp size, that kind of thing. And so again, all these would be addressed with a consistent LED tube retrofit in most cases. And again, the emergency lighting would be addressed with new emergency lighting and new exterior fixtures anywhere you see those. All right. The next measure that we're going to talk about is with regards to the HVAC systems. All 3 of these buildings are pretty similar in that they've got older, antiquated steam boiler systems. The majority of these buildings are heating only. There have been some areas where rooftop units have been added to provide cooling to select areas. But for the most part, again, an older steam distribution system, I know there's been problems with it in the past where floors have had to been torn up to address those, and then obviously the older boilers themselves. And so one option we looked at, and we'll talk about 2 today, is a full VRF system, and VRF stands for Variable Refrigerant Flow. And really, we had just completed the mini split scope here at the high school. This is kind of a big brother to that. You would have multiple indoor units per zone, one per zone, tied, in this case, you would have several to one condensing unit. So unlike the mini splits like we did on the high school, where kind of each classroom has its own condensing unit, this would have multiple indoor units tied to a single. And that's beneficial because what it allows the system to do is actually exchange BTUs between the various rooms, depending on what heating and cooling is needed throughout the space. And so it's actually more efficient than a traditional just mini split system. And again, there's kind of less infrastructure, if you will, because of the fact that we're able to combine multiple indoor units to a single outdoor unit.
And just sorry to interrupt. Just to clarify, the efficiency improvement is because it doesn't have to exchange that with the outdoor air.
That's
and then
correct.
Run through the compressor and then.
That's correct. And I'll elaborate a little bit more on the next slide, but that is correct. Yeah, we're actually able, in cases where we have a heating load and cooling load at the same time.
Basically taking it from one room to the
That's right. Yep. And it's all via refrigerant line. So what we're seeing on VRF is that it's a great system for a retrofit application because you've got older buildings. Running new ductwork, new piping, and things like that is very expensive. And so we're seeing, Columbus City Schools is a great example. They addressed a number of their older elementary buildings where they wanted to do the same thing, add cooling, and VRF is the path that they chose. And again, because the infrastructure is really just refrigerant lines, the cost to do that, is much less relative to doing like a 4-pipe hot water, chilled water system. I do want to call out too that what we're proposing here is a little bit different than the high school as well because we've actually spec'd a unit ventilator style indoor unit. So this would not be a wall mounted unit like what you've seen at the high school. It would match more the existing form factor in that it would be a floor mounted unit ventilator style unit with the ability to bring in outside air and that type of thing. So we provided the tonnages and the quantities by buildings there. We've assumed in this case that the existing steam system would be decommissioned. Now anywhere that's visible, we would cut and cap it. So if you were to walk in the classroom, you wouldn't be able to see any of that existing steam piping. But behind walls, and the boilers themselves, we've assumed that those would remain in place with this pricing we provided. If you go to the next slide, Will, I think this kind of gives a good feel for the efficiency of the VRF systems when you're using VRF to both heat and cool various spaces. And so here we've got, a number of zones that are calling for cooling and a number of zones that are calling for heating. And I think, this time of year, this is easy to imagine, right? We've got 50-degree mornings with 70-degree afternoons. And so, having rooms that need maybe cooling depending on which side of the building they're on and, solar heat gain and that kind of thing. It's very easy to imagine where we'd have this scenario. And so in this case, we're able to exchange BTUs via that heat recovery controller without even running the compressor on the outdoor unit. And that's really, the efficiency advantage in the VRF system when, again, you're using it for heating and cooling. And again, if you look at this picture, it kind of does a decent job of depicting the fact that it's just refrigerant lines, right? We don't have a bunch of ductwork or piping, and that's why this is a great application for a retrofit into an older building. We were asked to look at a couple different options with respect to the HVAC and ways we would add cooling to these spaces. And so we did evaluate doing VRF for just the cooling portion and then doing heating with hot water. And the thinking there is that with the hot water, gas is so cheap right now that it could potentially make sense. You lose the ability to exchange BTUs with the full heat-cool VRF system. And as you can see, the price is actually quite a bit more because we now have to demo out the boilers, demo out all the piping, run new hot water piping, and install new boilers. And so, this is not something that we're necessarily recommending, but we wanted to provide it as an option in the event that you wanted to look at having the ability to heat with natural gas and utilize that lower cost. Again, you'll notice one thing I didn't point out on the last slide, the utility savings are negative. Hopefully that makes sense. We are adding cooling to buildings that don't have it currently. And so that's obviously going to increase load on your building. And so we've shown that as a negative savings. The O&M savings then are a result of not having to maintain the steam system that you have currently. And so we show that as a positive number.
So it outweighs the additional cost, you're saying, the O&M, the savings through the O&M?
In the case of Marlboro and Washington, that's, the total savings is positive. Lexington is just barely, slightly negative. Yep. But the next slide will be just pictures of the existing steam system that you have. You can see there are some air handlers shown in these pictures as well. We'll talk about those on the next measure. Next slide is kind of a map overview of the existing layout by building. So this would be Marlboro. That blue section there would be area that is currently served by rooftop units and that would be air conditioned already. So we're not proposing to touch those areas. You've made that investment in adding cooling to those spaces, and so those would remain as is. The yellow areas are where you have existing steam unit ventilators. Those would again be replaced with the VRF style unit ventilators. The green area is an air handler that would be heating only and steam, heated by steam currently. And then the orange areas would be various steam, radiant heaters and that kind of thing. And so depending on which scenario you went with, those would be replaced with either electric heat or hot water heat if there's hot water available on that option. So we provided this type of map layout of the existing infrastructure for each of the three buildings. And so, Will, if you want to kind of go through those. Again, anywhere there's yellow would be replaced with new VRF system. The orange is existing steam. The green is air handler. And then in this building, Washington, you can see there is just a small office area in the front that would be rooftop unit, cooled by rooftop units. So you may be asking, okay, what do we do about the air handlers? Again, those are steam. If we get rid of the steam boilers, that heat goes away. And so we evaluated, this is mostly gym and cafeteria areas across the three buildings where you've got these air handlers, installing new air handlers and adding cooling to those areas as well. The reality is you wouldn't have to add cooling. Maybe cooling's not important in the gymnasiums. It's important to know that these would need to be addressed in some way because we would be eliminating the steam boilers. And so you wouldn't be able to leave those existing steam coils on those units. We could look at putting a hot water coil in if you were to go that route, or doing some form of electric heat if you were to do the full VRF route. Again, cost could come down if you didn't want to add cooling. to these areas. That's where we started, though, was with cooling, put new air handlers in with cooling capability on all three. All right, the next measure we looked at is a roof upgrade. Again, pretty consistent across the three buildings. You've either got a coal tar system or a build-up roof system with spray foam that was added at some later point with a granulated coating on top of that. Based on the core samples that we did, we're estimating an R value of about 15. But what we found when we did these core samples is that a lot of that foam insulation is wet. And so when insulation gets wet, it essentially has no R value at all. And so we think at least 20% of the roof area is wet. And that's what we've assumed for our calculations. I think it's probably a higher percentage based on the core samples that we did. So what we're proposing here is to eliminate or remove the existing roof system down to the decking. So getting rid of the foam roofing as well as the coal tar or the build-up roof, depending on what type, and then adding a new PVC Duralast type roofing system. A lot of times these PVC systems you'll see spec'd at 50 mil. We are proposing a 60 mil, which will give you more life. There is a 20-year no dollar limit warranty included in these prices. And again, a lot of this that we found was wet, and so we see big benefit from an energy savings standpoint on improving and replacing those wet systems. Next slide, Will. Again, we did go through and do some core samples. This allows us to know what's there currently so that we can come up with an R value and then also the condition. So this would be the Marlboro roof. On the next slide, Lexington, we actually did the core sample and there was water. It's hard to see on the projector there, but there's actually water in the bottom of that core sample there. So obviously not a good sign, and again, from an R value standpoint, is not a good thing for heat transfer. And then the third slide there, Washington. Again, very similar system. We did find core sample areas where that spray foam was wet. All right, and then the next measure would be windows and doors. Fortunately, you guys have addressed a number of these through the years. Going back to the early 2000s, double pane windows were installed in a large number of these areas. And so really the goal of this scope of work would be to address any single pane, non-thermally broken windows that haven't been addressed previously. And so we'll go through and kind of identify those on the map. We also included any doors where you're showing signs of rust and they need replacement. So again, a lot of those weren't addressed in that prior project. There's a lot of infiltration, especially along the bottom. And so we've included those doors based on where the need was from our audit. So, well, if you go to the next slide, this is Marlboro. The section there on the back, you can see the kind of the pink highlight. Those are all currently single pane. There's no thermal break on the frame itself. And actually a lot of the weather stripping, these things don't seal tight when they're closed. And so we actually had teachers mention the infiltration, especially in the wintertime. And so the scope at Marlboro would address that back section where those windows exist, as well as some of the doors there on the front shown in orange. Next building would be Lexington. This is really just that storefront area in the front there shown in yellow. There is kind of a foyer area, so it would be kind of both levels of windows, as well as then the cafeteria light shown to the left of that. And then Washington being the third. This is really just door replacement, and so those are shown there in pink. We saw several doors that were rusting, and so we felt these should be addressed as a part of this project as well. So everything we just discussed is shown here in what we call the menu, and really it's up to the district on what you choose. You can piecemeal, pick and choose however you wish. We call this a Chinese menu. It's really up to you guys on what, if anything, you decide to do going forward. We have called out an electrical service upgrade there at the bottom. We do feel that will be needed for Lexington. If you are to do the cooling ad, there is not enough electrical capacity there based on our initial audit, and so we would need to look at performing that upgrade. Now, one thing that is nice is that by doing the LED lighting, you're able to reduce the electric load throughout the building, so that helps with some of these others in terms of having enough capacity just based on that amp reduction on the LED lighting. So then we took the liberty of putting together a couple sample projects. This would be the one we would recommend in terms of the HVAC portion, again, doing the full VRF rather than the VRF with hot water. And so you can see the VRF with hot water is grayed out. It's not included in the sum at the bottom. And then we've included there at the bottom what the annual payment would look like given this package if you were to finance that over a 20-year term at 3% interest rate. And then if you were interested in the hot water option on the VRF, we did provide that project as well. That's sample project 2. Again, with the annual payment shown at the bottom as well for that 20-year term.
And with that, are there any questions?
Hey, Will, can I jump in here real quick?
Yeah.
I wanted to talk to you about the roof. I know we had chatted a little bit, but I just want to make sure that I kind of understand everything. So Duralast is basically the company that you're working with, correct?
It's one of the ones we can work with, yes.
Right.
Yeah, and it's a membrane PVC roof.
Right. Is it a single ply membrane?
It is, yes.
Okay. I guess just for the sake of the board, that would be a great concern to me. The roof above my head right now actually has 4. It's a multi plied system, which helps with weatherproofing. So I guess that would be the first thing that I would put out there for everybody. How is it put together? Is it a mechanically fastened by seams? Is that how that roof is done?
It is, yeah. It's mechanically fastened is what the pricing is based on now. We could look at an fully adhered system. It is typically more.
Right.
But that's, the pricing you're seeing there is for mechanically fastened.
Yeah, and once again, we have a fully adhered system here at the middle school. And I guess, Will, just at the end of the day, we had talked a little bit about this. Some of the estimates that we have had in the past, this roof, based on these Duralast and these specs, those numbers are a lot higher than what we have seen. Can you talk to us about what's going on there in the roofing world, I guess?
Yeah, so one of the high expenses we have, and I know you ran into this at the middle school roof as well, is the coal tar layer.
Right.
There is a high dollar amount tied to doing the labor and the removal of that. I guess the advantage we have with our contracting method is because we do the open book pricing. I mean, certainly as we go out and start securing bids and start talking to different material providers, any savings we get versus our budget would 100% go back to the district. But
Right.
I would say that our experience has been when you're comparing a PVC roof or the mechanically fastened roof to what you have at the middle school, for example, getting better bang for your buck.
Mm-hmm. Okay.
But we're open to, again, other designs, other layouts. And by all means, as we run our competitive bid process, we would certainly welcome multiple bids coming in.
Yeah, no, I appreciate that. I know the product we have here at the middle school, our folks, Mr. and Serpy, is very impressed with it. And if we're really looking at doing this right, I would really recommend we look at something bigger and better than a single ply membrane on the roof.
Yep.
I appreciate that information, partner.
Yeah, well, I have a question. Besides the cost difference, what are the pros and cons of each approach?
So on some of the if you start to add more plies, you can start to see some longer warranties. We've got a 20-year no dollar limit warranty on here that can into the more expensive roofs can go up to 25, sometimes even 30 when you're talking like build up roof. So that would be one advantage is you're going to pay more, but in some cases you are going to get a longer warranty depending on the roof style you go with. We have no dog in the hunt on this because we're not in any way married to the Duralast roof. We think it's a good product and it's a good, as Will mentioned, good value. But yeah, we're because of our contracting method, we can certainly look at others. And I will say, yeah, a big part of that price, it is higher than we typically see as well, but it's the labor hours associated with removing. It's a complete tear off of the existing roofs. And so that does cause that number to go up when you look at it like from a cost per square foot standpoint. But removing all that foam and that coal tar system is expensive.
And I think I can say that when we've spoken to a couple different roofing manufacturers and contractors, one of the options we already know is up front, we're looking, ideally, you tear it down, go down to the decking and build it back up. But in a worst case scenario, or potentially if you decide to move forward with this, there is an option to just shave off the foam layer and then maintain the coal tar buildup insulation on top of that and cover it up. So that would be another cost saving option we could have on the backside.
Yeah, I'd recommend that we go to the deck, to be very honest with you. I think that would be our best move. When you guys took out those cores, Will, were you able to test for asbestos? I can't remember where we talked about that.
We can't. And if there was going to be asbestos, it'd be down in the coal tar. So that's another option where we talked about there could potentially be abatement costs that would be tied to the asbestos in the coal tar, but that would be something we would test before we would get started on a project.
Yeah, because we were surprised here at the middle school where we got down in there and, realized we had asbestos we had to get rid of first. So,
yep.
This was a 1970. I don't know what that would look like back in the 50s, to be honest with you. I don't know.
Yeah, we would definitely have to test to determine exactly what solution would be best.
Okay.
So could you go back to what Mr. Roll was talking about? He said 4 plies at the middle school, and what's the difference in price? It'd be just a material difference in price, or is it also labor?
Traditionally, the labor for both is going to be very similar. It really does come down a lot of times to the material providers, and they're the ones that are going to back the warranties typically through their network of installers. So, you're coming up with something that's a little bit thicker, but like we said on this one, even with the single ply, we did go with a 60 mil. It's a little bit thicker than what we typically see, and there's a lot of regional districts that have used Duralast. There's some that have used Tremco, Garland, all the other Carlisle roofs. There's a whole variety of brands out there that, as Jarrett mentioned, we're open to all of them. What we did was put pricing together based on worst case scenarios going down to the deck, but certainly, if you guys decide to move forward, it would be something that we would shop aggressively and try and get best value.
So how would that affect the price you have estimated here? That would increase that, or does that move up to the maximum price that you have?
So the max price is a guarantee not to exceed max for the design that we had. When we go out to bid, any buyout savings versus that max price, 100% go back to the school district. So we have budgeted amounts in there that we're anticipating for material, for labor, et cetera. And when we shop that, any buyout savings would go back to you. Very similar to the House Bill 264 project, the windows across the front of the high school here were actually procured through buyout savings. I believe we came in $58,000 under budget for that scope, and we're able to add those in. So
yeah, that was windows in, I think blinds too. That worked out well.
Yes. Yeah, actually, I believe you are right.
Mm-hmm.
So did I understand you, if to remove the insulation and that sort of thing, if you find there's asbestos, then that is an additional cost here, or?
Yeah, so what we would do first is we would actually tear up the roof down, do the testing as Joe mentioned. And then if we determine asbestos is present, we have 2 options. We can abate it and go all the way down to the decking, or in talking with some of the installers, we could just tear off that option. We could just go down to the foam layer, keep the coal tar intact and undisturbed, and then put a new roof on top of it. So that would be, up to the district how they want to handle that if asbestos is present. But we did not have the opportunity to test it.
Could you speak a bit regarding your role in the project? From like start to finish, perhaps timelines and that sort of thing?
Yes. Yeah. So as I mentioned early on, we're a project developer. So we do the design, we do all the engineering, we do the material procurement, we do project management. So we would be one point of contact for the district from start to finish on the entire scope of work that you would decide to implement, whatever that may be, based off of the menu. Our project management team would oversee all the bids, oversee all the subcontractors, deal with any issues that might pop up, deal with any questions from the subcontractors and see it through to completion. And then as far as schedule goes, we did put together a draft schedule based on if you had decided to move forward here in the month of March. And based on the schedule, we should be able to complete all the scopes of work with the exception of potentially the windows. There might be some windows left depending on what lead times are and at the point that those would be ordered by September, by the start of school.
And that would involve us making a commitment before the end of the month. Is that what you're saying?
Yeah, I mean, if you're talking all three, we'd want to know by the end of the month. Certainly within the next, yeah.
Since we have the project menu, we also have the option if we'd like to do certain projects, this fiscal year, other projects down the line.
Yes.
Okay.
Yep. Yeah, the only thing that would be subject is if something was then committed to later on down the line, we might have some slight modifications for price increases if it's next year, for example, but outside of that, yes.
I noticed you had a 20-year financing. If we wanted to spread the project over a couple of years rather than the money and spend the money as we receive it, how does that work?
Yeah, we could do that as well. It's really up to the district, I would say, as far as final implementation plan. As mentioned, Jared and I would kind of present an a la carte menu, and you pick off of it as you see fit, and if you wanted to do it over a few years. The only advantage to doing it, if you were to do it in a shorter term, would be economies of scale. So when you're doing a roof, when you're doing HVAC, and as we're reaching out to subcontractors, you're not getting double or triple charged for mobilization fees, things like that. But really, it'd be up to you as far as the final design. And we did run shorter term lease purchase numbers as well. A lot of districts we work with in the region like to spread out the cost as long as possible. I know you are in the unique position with some pipeline funds that are coming in that might shorten that timeline for you, but we did run some numbers if you wanted to know what those looked like as well.
On the full VRF system, would everything be located on the roofs of the buildings? And is there any potential concern as far as running the lines in Marlboro Elementary, having the second floor down to the first floor?
We've actually done that quite a bit at Stone Monroe Falls City Schools, North Canton Schools at their middle school. Recently, we've installed some line sets in their building. So typically what we do is we put them up and we have them hidden either behind line hide or even at Howland Schools, we actually had custom built drywall kind of in a box to hide everything so the aesthetic of the space wasn't affected. But usually the only issue you have to worry about is the first floor for any condensate that might be there. If we don't have the condensate drain going through the wall, you might just need an upsized condensate pump to be able to handle that increased head pressure that you're going to have against it.
You are typically limited to 100 feet of refrigerant piping. So we would, lay everything out.
Per unit?
Yeah, right. So that we can maximize, the number of units tied to a condensing unit. The more we can tie to a condensing unit, the better, because then we can utilize that ability to swap BTUs more. But we've got to look at that 100 feet, and that becomes the limiting factor typically. So. And
where is the location of the heat recovery controller for those units? Is that on the roof as well, or?
Typically, it's in the space. Where we would locate it here, we haven't gotten that far, but typically it's within the building somewhere rather than on the roof. Yep.
Yeah, and to answer even the condensing unit question, there would be an option if you wanted to, if we had the space to be able to mount it ground mount. Yeah, the only issue a lot of districts run into is obviously vandalism, maybe access for people kicking it, hitting it, backing into it with a car, whatever it may be. But we're indifferent on that. I think we priced it to be up on the roof, which is typically, I think, a little more expensive, but we could do a ground mount if for maintenance purposes, whatever it may be.
Yeah, how many condensing units are we looking at for Marlboro? Is that I gotta look back through here. Is that I just got the total.
Yeah, I know we've got 13. I think it's two condensing units at Marlboro.
Two condensing
I believe.
units.
Yeah. It's 13 indoor units, 24 tons total, is what we've come up with.
Okay, so we have the potential of putting one on the ground versus the roof.
Good. Yep.
Yeah, I would say when we price this, what we do is about 75-80% of the engineering. And then depending on if someone decides to move forward, that's when we really get into the fine details of exact locations and doing the mapping and even working with the district on preferences.
And I think we would also look to maximize kind of that solar heat gain and making sure that we're trying to get as many rooms that could potentially have a heating load at the same time as a cooling load, so that we can get that free swap, right? We wouldn't want everything on the east side tied to one unit, because they're all going to need cooling probably when the sun comes up, and so we would look to
And these
maximize.
have the capability to bring in fresh air from the outside for some of the cooling when the humidity is at more ideal levels as well then?
Fresh air, yeah, would be however fresh air is handled currently. So like when you've got the unit ventilators with the outdoor intakes, we would look to utilize that. And that's one reason we specified the unit ventilator style indoor unit.
But just to clarify, does it have the ability to cool using just outside air without the refrigerant and
You mean like economizing or,
yeah, like
or
an
doing?
economizer?
Typically those outside air openings aren't capable of doing like enough CFM to really provide adequate cooling on the, on that size unit.
Okay.
So there could be some that happens. I'm not going to say it's going to be able to meet, the full requirement.
Well,
It just
in
depends
our
on
region, it's pretty minimal the amount of time you have to get that cooling before the humidity gets to the point where it's. But I just wanted to know.
It's a great question.
Could you speak to the asbestos issue with the project you have proposed and the updates as to just your opinion on the overall issues with that?
You mean how much we would anticipate running into?
Well,
Is that what?
does this require any abatement, or?
It may in a handful of spots. The roof, as we mentioned, is one that we think could be certainly an area that might need it. As far as the HVAC components, on the lighting, we wouldn't anticipate it. I really don't think at all. Like we mentioned, we would steer clear probably of new fixtures that could potentially disturb and create an issue where you need to abate. The HVAC options may in a handful of spots. I know we'd have to get with Al and the district on some of the reports that you have on. I know a lot of districts have primarily gotten rid of most asbestos, but a couple of elbows may have some. There might be a handful of spots, but even with us in the boiler room, for example, we're not really addressing anything. We're going to abandon in place. And one of the thoughts was at the time that that's added cost for the demo costs, and that's added cost potentially with abatement costs, and it's a space that necessarily wouldn't be needed. So I don't think we'd anticipate running into a lot, but there certainly is a potential that we might run into a handful of places that we would have to evaluate and have that abated.
Yeah, I want to speak up on that as well because, we actually do have numerous asbestos issues in the district, specifically at Lexington. We had Bill Racine come in Monday and Tuesday of this week to basically do a study. And what he is going to do for us in all three of the elementary buildings is basically he's going to give us a dollar amount on what it would take for us to abate based on a project that we would select, if that makes sense.
Yep.
He's going to try to give us an all-in number and then kind of narrow it down based on project. Like I know at Marlboro, we were just talking out there the other day. We got asbestos on the south side, where the windows are right now, for example. So he's going to give us a better report. A couple of years ago, it was like $300,000, I think, to abate all of Lexington. So that building has a lot of concerns for me, but we'll have a better idea after Mr. Racine is able to give me a total update on all the asbestos across those three elementary buildings.
Yeah, and the other thing we can do, primarily, I guess the points of concern would be penetrations with line sets and potentially any demo, but I can always provide samples at other districts that have similar age buildings that are similar sized. Elementary schools, Stowe, for example, I think all of their elementary schools are similar age facilities to yours. So certainly we could provide whatever abatement costs there were there tied to our project. And I think that would give you a very good feel because that, again, was running a lot of line sets were primarily what we were looking at.
Do you anticipate you would only need to replace what would get disturbed? Is that, or abate what gets
Correct.
disturbed?
Yes, correct. So only locations maybe where we're penetrating the roof or penetrating through a wall if a wall had asbestos in it. And then any piping that was removed wouldn't need to be abated if it has asbestos on it.
So the $300,000 figure that Mr. Knoll's talking about would be like
Overall.
a complete overall, and we would not probably
Yeah,
need to do that. Is that correct, Mr. Knoll?
yeah, that estimate from a few years ago is like an all-in number, if I remember, from Mr. Racine, based on just if we decided, hey, we're going to abate all the asbestos in that building. So that's why I wanted him to just kind of get that number again updated, but give us a little more specifics on, hey, if we do a roof project, here's the asbestos dollars. If we did a heating and cooling, that kind of thing. So he's going to target that down for us. So we'll be able to have a pretty good understanding of what that might look like.
Do we have the overall cost for the other two elementaries too, Joe?
Not yet.
Not
No,
yet.
yeah, Bill was out here, like I said, Monday and Tuesday with Mr. Inserpi. So, hopefully here, in the next month, we're going to have 2020 numbers for all three of those buildings moving forward.
Will he be able to give us any insight, or maybe you guys could as well, as far as if we do renovations or these rooftop units, is there going to be any additional costs if we went to do full abatement after that? I don't imagine this isn't, the line sets are going to be obstructing any possible abatement in the future that would raise the cost of it then.
No, I would say because most of the line sets, we're going to have a pitch pocket that's going to go through the roof. So it'll be whatever was disturbed or need to be addressed would already be kind of addressed as part of the project. So any ongoing, line sets might need to be moved slightly, but I wouldn't imagine that you'd have too much of an issue with future abatement. And we can be cognizant of that as well as we implement to make sure that we're steering clear of anything that might be considered hot.
What kind of warranty is on the actual equipment?
It varies by equipment. We were talking about this actually earlier. Lighting, some new fixtures for exterior might have 10-year warranties. A lot of the bulbs come standard with 5, but part of our competitive bidding process is we try and drive higher warranties from the manufacturers, to try and drive more value for the district. On the HVAC equipment, I would say it's pretty typical to a lot of HVAC equipment. Compressors are going to come with 5-year warranties. Different components might have 1. It's just going to depend on which component. But that's another one we can try and drive higher warranties on.
And the average lifespan of the equipment?
I think it's about 18 to 20 years from the system as a whole. And then after that becomes, and I'll defer to Jared, I guess, for.
Yeah, 18 to 20 years is what we typically see. I guess it's important to note, though, that when you hit the 18 to 20 year mark, you're not having to replace the whole system, right? It's much like lighting. Yeah. You may start to see some failures, but it's not like wholesale come in one day and replace it all because it all failed. So,
in 18, 20 years down the line, the higher efficiency equipment that'll be available there will be the premium cost, and therefore, if you replaced it with the same as, it's going to be considerably less expensive than the price we bought it at.
Right. Yeah.
Unless we decide to, upgrade the efficiency, but what are our options with this type of system? With the VRF, you're going to have to upgrade the outdoor unit as well, and you should probably have to do the whole system then to achieve a higher efficiency, correct?
You could look at R22, right, how it is today, and you've got some drop-in options, right, with R22 being obsolete, and then some people just replace the whole thing. It's hard to kind of predict that 20 years out, but I think it is important to note that the compressor and that kind of thing is located in the outdoor unit, and so you're not going to have very many of those outdoor units, right? And so the big cost from a maintenance standpoint.
Well, and that's another thing of if we can locate one or both outdoor units on the ground, that's going to lower our maintenance costs. I would imagine not having to have someone get up on the roof to work on it.
And again, we're open to that. The people messing with it was our concern, but you can always do fencing and that kind of thing if needed. So we can certainly evaluate that if it's of interest.
Okay. Any idea of the efficiency ranges on the equipment?
From heating, cooling, or both?
Both.
Cooling, I want to say we're 15 or 16 EER sticking in my head. And then I like to think of heating from a COP standpoint. I think these are like 3.5 to 4, somewhere in that range. And don't hold me to those, but that should be a rough idea.
I just wanted to have a basic idea of what we're looking at.
They're very efficient. In line with a mini split from an efficiency standpoint, and then you get the additional heat recovery capability, which improves that even further from just an energy use standpoint. So
mentioned with your bidding process that you have vendors you work with, as well as we could reach out to our local vendors to submit bids. Is that correct?
Yeah. So what we do, one of the things I didn't mention is in the event a district moves forward with a contract, and Joe and I have been through this a few times, we do a project kickoff where we go through every single scope of work, and we have regional partners that we can bring to the table, ones that we've even worked with in the district already on past projects. But on top of it, we would interview the district and ask them who they want invited. So, Joe touched on earlier a different roofing system that he may want evaluated, looked at. We can bring them to the table. They can throw a bid at it. Lighting, electrical contractors, mechanical contractors, all of the above. Same on the supply side.
Hey, Joe, what type of water heating do we have in the buildings? Do you know? Are they combined with the boiler systems, or you guys probably should?
Yeah, I was going to say what I recall was
Yeah.
traditional domestic hot water, I believe. I don't think.
Separate tanks.
Yeah.
Yeah. On the boiler
Right.
systems. Okay, I just wanted to make sure.
Based on your estimate, you said only Lexington would need the electrical upgrade. We're good at both Marlboro and Washington.
Correct. Yes. Yeah, it's from the initial evaluation. We were able to drop the load enough with the LED lighting that even with the addition of the air conditioning, we were still under the capacity. It's obviously pending final engineering, but that's what it looked like from our initial estimates.
Then these are like, oh, go ahead.
Sorry, go ahead, Carolyn.
With these main projects, is this all you looked at, or are there other needs there that we should also think about?
So when we first started looking at this, with being on a tight time frame, what we did was we tried to identify and look at the things that might create longer lead times. HVAC, windows, roofs, things like that. And then lighting was looked at because anytime you add air conditioning, as we mentioned, we don't want to, if we don't have to do an electrical service upgrade, which is costly, we try and avoid that. So kind of threw those in. There are other needs, I would say, at the building, but we did not have a chance to look at those yet. Those are certainly things that we can take a peek at down the road, but at least the things that are within our scope of work and our area of expertise.
Yeah, Ms. Gabrick, and that's really one of my concerns. I mean, PlugSmart did a great job highlighting what's in their wheelhouse, which I appreciate. And, Will and I have a great relationship. PlugSmart's been awesome to us, but we do have some other significant needs that some might argue are even more of a priority, to be honest with you, that we're going to have to get on the radar here as well very quick, in my opinion.
And what are those, Joe?
Well, let's start at Lexington. The asbestos is a huge one, but probably the bigger issue there is the wastewater treatment plant.
Are you planning on replacing that before it's needed then? Is that what you're thinking?
Well, I think it's needed. I think that's something, we've been talking about that for a lot of years, and I think we need to get that radar on that wastewater treatment plant ASAP, in my opinion.
And
I think
you're
it's
suggesting to
very-
abate asbestos regardless whether it's disturbed? That's what you're proposing?
No. Just to be clear, we're going to have Mr. Racine come out, and he's going to take
Right.
an assessment of Lexington and basically tell us, based on what projects we want to move forward with in the near future, here's the abatement cost. So we're going to rely on his expertise, depending on what project we do, to equal the asbestos. But that's the building that has our biggest problems and concern. So asbestos, I would say, and then the wastewater treatment plant. I would also say the repair costs to Marlboro based on the health department and that quote that I had for you guys.
Can our maintenance department do any of that?
Yeah, and I wanted to talk about that a little bit. My hope is they can do some of that work. Obviously there's other things they need to do as well. So I was kind of looking at the worst case scenario with that quote. That quote came in at $107,000. The good news is that included fixing the basement water issue that goes downstairs too. But our guys can do some of that, I hope, but some of that other work's going to have to be done.
But several of those things look like they're maintenance rather than that we would have to contract it out.
No, like I said, I'm hopeful we can do a big part of that. We're not going to be able to do that basement water issue, but I just wanted to get on the record here what that scenario might look like at worst case scenario. And that was just one bid, but that's still some significant work that needs to be done. And then I guess my other big concern is being ADA compliant. I've talked to a couple of you guys about that in the past. I mean, it's the year 2020, and our ADA compliance is poor. And my thought is we need to look at getting an elevator in both of the elementaries that have 2 floors. And I would obviously highly recommend that. We can't do the whole building, make it ADA compliant, but we can surely look at an elevator. So I guess.
And what's the cost of that?
Oh, I have no idea. We need to get some people
You don't
out
have
there
that?
to take a look at that. If that's something you guys are interested in doing, we'll move forward with some quotes.
Yeah, we need to
I think we
look
need
at
to
everything
vote before we
obviously.
decide whether we're going to move forward with it.
Yeah, so I'm hearing you say that we would like to look at an elevator to be ADA compliant.
We were asking you to get a quote.
Great. Yep.
Not
No,
that we're moving forward.
Those are just 3 or 4 things I would just share with you real quick, as far as some.
What about
projects.
Washington? Do you have anything for Washington?
I don't think there's anything specific other than what we have been talking about on the radar.
So what have we been talking about?
Well, you talked about heating and cooling and a roof tonight, right?
Oh,
Doors and windows.
other than these things, you think everything on this list will take care of Washington and no additional items?
Oh, no. Like I mentioned, I think we need a elevator in there. I think we need to be looking at being ADA compliant. I think that's important. And I would like to look at some life safety type things as well that are out there. And I guess the bigger issue, and I don't even know the answer to this one, is we haven't talked anything about structure and foundation. And, what do we do in Lexington when we have water leaking out of the building? What do we do with that? So
What if you, if we've been having this problem, what's your research show on that?
well, remember Saul Harris Day came out a couple years ago and it gave us some dollars, and I actually have them scheduled to come back out again on April the 14th, Lord willing, if everybody's kind of up and running. Because I like to spend some time with them. I mean, they build school buildings for a living, as you guys know, and I'd like to kind of get them on site, take a look at a couple different issues. But Lexington, has a kind of an issue in the back wall there that has concerned me in the past. So
is that water intrusion at that wall or?
No, it's up on the 2nd floor in the music room. And I can't remember all the details off the top of my head, but there's a beam there that I had lentil that caught the attention of Saul Harris Day when they were there last. And like I said, there's just some things like that are out there that I think is worth our time and attention as well. Just off the top of my head here tonight.
Do you agree, Joe, that the majority or the main projects are the ones that are listed with the heating, the lighting, cooling, roofs, windows?
Yeah. I think
I
think that takes a big punch out of what our needs are. Absolutely. Yeah. And just some of those other ones that I mentioned, maybe a little more building specific, like the wastewater treatment plant or other 2 buildings seem to be okay, but Lexington obviously not. Those are the big dollar tickets. I mean, as you look at the different cost sets, those are the big ones.
What's the estimate on the wastewater treatment?
Over at Lexington?
I thought you said that's one that needed replaced.
Correct. I remember seeing like a $400,000 estimate. That's probably not current, but that was in the OFCC document. I think it was 400 some. We did the one here at the middle school a few years back, as you remember. And can't remember the cost of that off the top of my head right now, but I would say we're probably around that $400,000 mark to get that thing up and running where it needs to be.
Well, as far as issues with the asbestos due to leaks, wouldn't you put the roofs as priority to prevent, the leaks of water coming through and possibly bringing asbestos down into the classrooms?
Yeah. If there's asbestos on that roof, absolutely.
Or in the roofs or possibly in the ceilings. We've got some asbestos in some ceilings, correct?
Well, in Lexington, you have asbestos in those ceilings like crazy. Yeah.
How would you see your role of working through the project with the superintendent and the board in light of the current situation in the community and world?
Yeah, I would say, I mean, moving forward on a project, I'd really defer. I mean, that's up to the school district. Those are decisions that are really probably outside of our expertise at Plug Smart. But, we've had pretty good relationships, I know, working with the district in the past, and would like to continue those if you guys decide to move forward.
Do you anticipate any slowdown in obtaining materials and things like that?
So moving forward, everything we're hearing right now and everything we've heard from our suppliers is, as of right now, no. Fortunately, a lot of the different material providers we're talking about are North American based, whether it be the United States, Mexico, Indiana, wherever they're coming from. But as of right now, we're not hearing that. But again, in theory, I guess down the road, something could change. But the good news is, as of this week, we're hearing good things, that the supply chain has not been disrupted.
They're considered essential businesses.
That's the other thing I was just about to say, is it's considered essential business. Construction is. So far, we've not seen any slowdown or any holdup. There's actually a dual advantage, though, here for school districts, and a lot of our clients that we're working with, we're telling the same thing. There have been a lot of slowdowns for mechanical contractors or electrical contractors or groups like that. And timing wise, as far as doing open book pricing and competitive bidding, we're seeing it, especially in Columbus, a lot of different companies are putting employees on furlough. So they're desperate for business right now, which in those scenarios, when you're running a competitive bid process, just drives a lot of value for the timing of a project like this.
So if I understand this right, to do all 3 buildings, we're looking at a minimum, and that's the projects that you have listed in their entirety. It'd be 5.1 million for the minimum to 5.8 for the max, and that'd be the range we're working in.
Yes, correct.
So we're looking at less than, on the average, less than 2 million per building. And of course, that Marlboro would be the least expensive. Is that correct?
I actually have broken out is about 1.616 million is the, if you were to pull out all the Marlboro items.
Okay.
Was that the minimum or maximum or just
That was
average?
the max, actually.
Max.
The max is 1.6
616, yep.
for Marlboro.
I got 1.617, so I must have rounded up.
Yeah, actually, you're right. It is. It should be rounded up.
And that's compared to if we were going to go with a new consolidated. I mean, we're looking, that was a $30 million price tag approximately, with interest and everything. So, I mean, for me, repairs is reasonable. Doing the repairs and updates, it's very reasonable, even with the additions that Mr. Knoll is suggesting. And I mean, I don't think we have to get everything done all in one year. I think if we had a plan and spread it out over time, that would work. Now, if we go with the additional plans that are not within your scope, what's that mean? We,
You mean,
like, for example, he said like the basement needed repaired. We would just have to hire a separate contractor for that, or how's that work?
yeah, you're talking about like maybe painting or carpeting or basement
Painting and
repair,
carpeting
tuck
would be
pointing
just-
on.
we just get local vendors for that, I'm assuming?
Yeah, that would be, that's outside of our scope of work. Our traditional core competency. So yes, that would just be addressed separate of us.
And just to clarify, on these scopes of work, the items or the rooms that you have highlighted in orange that have existing steam heat, and it says that unit would be to be replaced with hot water heat. That's not included in this price, or it is.
It is. So on the hot water option, that is included.
Okay,
in.
just
On
I just want
on the full VRF option where we're not coming back with
on the full
boilers,
VR. That's what I was asking. That's what I meant.
It's we actually the call out there is electric heat in that case. So,
Okay.
We don't like leading with electric heat, but there's just so few areas. We don't feel it makes sense to add a boiler to address those, and so we would look at doing some form of electric heat, mostly in it's entryways and things like that where you've got radiators and unit heaters and that kind of thing. So that is included in our price.
Josh, could you speak, with your expertise, speak to the difference between your opinion between the full VRF and the VRF with the
Well,
hot water?
just looking at the cost of operation, I think it's a kind of a no-brainer. Like they said, to go with the full VRF versus the hot water option. What do you think about that, Joe?
I totally agree with that. Yep. Totally.
It'll knock down our actual estimated savings, and not on top of the additional cost.
That's of almost a $3,000 or $3 million difference.
What's that?
I said the difference between those two projects is, 5.8 million versus 8.4, and so it's close to $3 million all in. That's a big number.
Pay $3 million more and have more operation costs and maintenance.
Yeah.
We agree. Yeah, we agree. The full VRF makes sense. Again, we're asked to look at a couple.
Really
of
like your hot
options.
water.
Yeah. Hot water can be great, especially with condensing boilers. But when you've got to add a whole new system and all the infrastructure and piping, then yeah, it's tough to make those numbers work. So.
Yep.
Joe, if the board goes down this path using PlugSmart for the repairs and the updates that you have heard tonight, can you work with PlugSmart and these plans within the parameters and, slightly adjusted for some of the things you've mentioned?
Well, Will's a tough guy to work with. I'm not going to lie to you. He's tough. No, I tell you what, I got a lot of, I wish I could see your face, Will. I can't see. I got a lot of.
I'm smiling.
And PlugSmart, they've been nothing but professional, top of the line. We've done some great. We did the House Bill 264 project with them. We did the roof and the windows next door. There's been times where he said, "You know what, Joe, this is a better idea. I'm going to tell you," and I've appreciated that. So I have 100% faith in Will and PlugSmart moving forward with whatever repairs the board decides to go with.
So that is a yes, then, that you could work with PlugSmart with these plans?
Yes.
Okay. And Katie, are you still out there? Has she left?
Yeah. Yep, I'm here.
Okay.
Sorry. I had myself on mute, so I didn't make any noise.
Sorry. I was just wondering if you had any thoughts or comments, since you the one that's going to write the checks and that sort of thing.
Sure. I was waiting for my turn. So the only thoughts that I have on this or concerns are timing of cash flow and things that relate to that. So the superintendent, treasurer, which me obviously, and the board president, we have to sign something called a 412 certificate with projects like these. So what that is doing is certifying that the funds are available for this project. And I had the opportunity to speak to, get some information from council on this, just to make sure that we've got our I's dotted and T's crossed. And it was advised that we stick to as far as the Nexus funds, it's been advised that we stick to the undisputed value. So that would be the lesser value, obviously, right now, because that's what we're getting.
The
And
disputed value?
yeah,
Undisputed value.
No,
Yeah,
that'd
so
be
that
the
would
disputed value, right?
yeah, it would be so for example, it'd be the lower amount.
Yes. Okay.
And due to the unpredictability of the outcome of the Nexus appeal, it's advised that we stick to a single contract.
Can you say that again? You were breaking up a little bit there.
Oh, sorry. Due to the unpredictability of the outcome of the Nexus appeal at
The
this
appeal.
point, it's advised that we stick to a single year contract situations that match up to our cash flow and phases for the districts and signers being you, Mrs. Gabrick, myself, and Joe's personal protection, because when we sign that 412 certificate, we become personally liable saying that these funds are available. And because of the circumstance right now, with it being, the dispute being up in the air and all that, and how it's going to land, we need to take caution in what we're saying is available and we're certifying. So
Okay, so
that was brought up to me in speaking with council on this, that we need to be cautious on that.
okay, so remind me again, what was the Nexus check or the Nexus payment that you received?
So for this year, we're going to receive, like this fiscal year, we're going to get $872,000, and that's the reduced amount. And
That's the reduced amount.
And then for a full year, being next fiscal year, 1.7 million. And then going forward, we're sort of expecting it to be reduced by, I don't know, roughly like 3% is kind of been what's happened with other pipeline situations due to valuation and different things like that. So there'll be slight reductions going forward or assumed. So, but that's kind of what we got going on right now.
Okay, so you would expect a 3% reduction the following year, or only when,
Each of the following.
doesn't it get revalued every 3 years?
Well, it'd be each of the following years, the assumption right now, based on some guidance that we had gotten from Mike Sobel and the Ohio Department of Taxation and that group. So that's kind of what we're basing it off of right
Okay.
now.
Okay, so if I understand you right, we have 872 that you received, and then we're going to receive another 872 in July or August. Is that correct?
It'd be in the fall, because
Why the fall?
well, it comes in the first half and the second half. So
Right, but I thought we paid the taxes in July or August, so you would get it in the summer.
we're supposed to we haven't received the first payment yet. We just got notification
Okay.
that we're getting it. It should be at the time though, the 872. And then the next one should come in the fall.
So the 1.7 million total that we would get this calendar year, potentially
Right,
we could, if we decide that Marlboro is a project we do, you would be comfortable with us using that?
So we would certify that.
I mean, I understand it's over 2 fiscal years for you, but for the project year would be the calendar year.
I need to think on that. Like I need to think on that, on exactly. I need to make sure the cash flow aligns with exactly. I just want to make sure that we're doing this exactly right. You know what I mean?
Right.
I don't want to rush into anything and mess something up. You know what I mean?
Okay, so that's something you're gonna work on and.
Absolutely, yes.
Okay.
But I need to know what the plan is first, I guess.
I'm not sure we can commit. Can we commit to a plan before we know?
Or at least what we're thinking, or throw out some ideas, or what.
I think it's reasonable to, look at, I know right now we've got all the schools closed, but we don't know if that's going to get lifted by the end of the school year. I think it seems highly probable that it won't, but I don't know if we want to look at getting into any construction projects at any of the other two schools during this school year, in the chance that that does get lifted and we're in the middle of a construction project in those buildings. And I think it would still seem logical for us to start the projects at Marlboro Elementary and then look at, beyond that as summer projects in the other two schools, because it seems like these are projects that you guys could do over a summer period, correct?
Yeah, that's accurate. Recently, actually, just outside of Akron, we did 3 elementary schools with a VRF, a hot water system.
Now, when you guys do, like you said, 3 elementary schools, or our scope with the 3 schools, if you did them all at once, would you have multiple contractors, or would you have one I guess it depends on the size.
It depends. We would leave all of that open for bidding purposes to maybe take advantage of a few different contractors. So we've done it both ways. And that's where we're kind of talking about the economies of scale. If you have a large enough outfit that could tackle all 3 and provide enough manpower, that we were comfortable with the timeline, because certainly the timeline would be the most sensitive piece. But that would be something our project managers would evaluate. Recent examples, obviously at the high school here, we used one contractor, but at Howland schools, doing an air conditioning ad project, we split it amongst 2 different contractors for 5 schools. So we've done it both ways.
A lot of it's about capacity. Will, you're right. You got to have the manpower.
Right.
Yeah.
Well, I'm just looking at it financially from the aspect of the Nexus money versus, taking this term with the annual payment. That interest rate raises the cost pretty significantly. And I think we could probably time this out where it'll be beneficial to do these projects separate, even if there's a cost savings. I think cost savings doing everything all at once. I think that interest rate probably would outweigh those savings. What do you think about that, people in the sky, Joe and Catherine?
I can tell you I'm more comfortable with sectioning it out, because I just don't like counting my chickens before they hatch.
Yeah.
It makes me nervous personally.
Yeah, we talked today with our gal about Nexus, and there's just so much that's still up in the air. Right now we're getting about 50% of what was projected initially. We're going through this appeal and an amended appeal, and I know where Katie's at. I mean, it's hard to start counting on those dollars, when you don't really have a good idea about what's going to happen. We hope the June timeline stays in play. We talked about that today with the Department of Taxation. They're supposed to make the decision, but we all know somebody's going to appeal that. It's either going to be us, hopefully, if we don't like it, or it's going to be Nexus if they don't like it. And then that process just kind of keeps going on and on. So
the decision you said is going to be made in June, and what, on past practice, how long has it gone out in the past? Not with Nexus, but with other pipelines that you've researched.
What our attorney said today is that's what's on the docket, is to have it in June. But with things going down and or businesses shutting down, they would not commit to June, but that's their goal. And then obviously if there's appeals, her comment today was it could take 2 or 3 years, and then of course it ends up in the Ohio Supreme Court if it goes that far. And I guess that's kind of what the treasurer's concerns are.
But what I'm hearing you say is we would only commit to spending the lower amount. So if the appeal came through and was in our favor, we would have additional money. Is that what I'm hearing you say?
Is that correct, Katie?
Right. Yeah. If the appeal was in our favor, then yes.
Okay.
And I think it would be fiscally responsible, exactly like you said, to narrow our scope within the money that hasn't been challenged,
Right.
and move forward from there. And
Then-
between that and what we have in the permanent improvement fund, as well as other necessary repairs at the other buildings and projects in the future, we need to plan all that out with this project to decide
Yeah.
what we're doing right now and in the years to come.
Yeah, I guess I'd be remiss if I didn't mention our building across the street, either as far as, a roof for that high school as well. I know
Yeah.
we kind of just focused on these 3 elementaries, and rightly so, but I know that's another project that we got to kind of keep on the front burner.
How much money's left from the Terry's Tire Town Fund? Is that all spent?
Well, Katie, we brought in what, 760, I think.
Right. That money wasn't put in a specific fund.
Yeah,
So
yeah.
that was just, I believe, receipted back into the general fund under real
Yeah.
estate. So there's no accounting for that specific.
But is it spent or is it there?
I believe, if I remember sitting in the board meeting in November, I believe that was promised away with that bonus. too.
Well, we gave some
Promised
of that.
away with what?
We gave some of that money away with the bonus that we gave to our staff. And
But
I
it
think
wasn't that much, was it?
Oh, no, it wasn't that. I think it was, you remember that number, Kate? I
Well,
think it was
how much was that settlement?
Was it
for?
772,000?
I
somewhere
think
around there?
Terrystown was
Oh,
like 760,
All right.
770,
So,
and
like-
then I think we did maybe
half of it.
240 for the
Yeah. You're right. You're right.
much reserve bonuses for our staff members around the holiday.
Right. So, I mean, yeah, theoretically, you could say that half of it's left, but like I said, it's not sitting in a fund anywhere. It just went into the general fund.
Right, but it could be available for roofing needs for the high school if,
Well, whatever money's sitting in the general fund is what is available of that. So look at, I mean, whatever's in the 5-year forecast is what you got with regard to that.
Katie, could you just briefly address some of the comments we're hearing from the community about how we are bankrupt? I mean, are we bankrupt or are we not bankrupt? Could you address that?
Currently, no. We have currently a very healthy cash carryover. My current thoughts on that are that when you look at line 6.010 projected out, we're projected to spend more than what we're bringing in revenue. And if that continues as projected in the November forecast, now mind you, I haven't had a chance to do my own forecast yet, so
Okay.
we'll see how that pans out. But I suspect it'll be very similar.
And-
If that continues, you'll see a continual declining of our cash carryover that we've had for the last several years, and then as you see, as you've heard, once a district goes into negative cash carryover, then you hear about the whole fiscal watch.
Right, but I don't think you go immediately in. I think you have opportunities to, I mean, have we implemented looking into increased programming and things like that to try to bring more money in? Or is that something?
So, I mean, it starts out as, I believe they send you, I believe if you're negative in the 3rd year of your forecast, they send you a letter and they say, hey, this is where we're putting you, and you need to come up with a plan to fix this and,
Right.
and
Well,
turn the trajectory of where you're headed.
yeah, and
So-
also, are we able to avoid getting to that point by considering some of that Nexus money as well, that we could reserve to put towards to offset some of those costs to avoid getting to that point? Are we able to reappropriate some of those funds?
Now, the board has the ability to move the Nexus funds in a vote if they vote to. Now, my only concern with that is if you tie up your funds, as we kind of been talking about, if you tie them up and we get to that point where you run out of money in the general fund, if you tie up the funds in these projects,
Yeah, you
then
can't move it over.
you won't have it. So that's my worry in this situation. So we need to be real cautious about that. I mean, but there is also the option of putting a levy on the ballot, or what the one we don't want to talk, the R word, the reduction word of But
So basically, a good route to take would be to keep a conservative reserve of that money to offset some of the operational costs. Keep that in mind while planning our projects moving forward.
that would be what I would recommend. Yes, absolutely.
And then if the appeal gets turned over, or we end up, it gets decided to be the 30% versus the current 52%?
I believe right now we're at
7.
I think it's at 53. Like it's the
53%.
valuation is at 47, and then I think 53 is the.
So if it gets decided that a year, or our payments improve over the next year, then we can reevaluate our future projects from that point on.
Yeah.
While considering the operational cost of the district and the net negative number
Right.
coming up on us.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, I mean, everybody thinks the treasurer is all doom and gloom and all that, and that's not the case. It's just our job is to report, what we see, so that you guys are aware of the possibilities of what could happen, so that we can change the story, and so that, and avoid those things from happening.
Katie, if you could just briefly comment. I mean, if we're that concerned about fiscal watch in a couple years, why did we buy 5 buses at the last meeting? I mean, why was that recommended?
Oh, that's an easy one. So typically, the district buys buses in pairs, from what I've seen in the past and in other districts.
Right.
And I'm sure you could even vouch for that, right? I mean, have
Right.
you?
I mean,
So-
not usually 5 though.
Well, but you're actually only paying for 2. Well, 2.5 to be fair. So, I mean, do you really want to turn down 2.5 free buses?
Well, if we didn't have the money, yes.
Well, I guess what she's saying is it's going to become a necessity soon enough that if you put it off now, you're going to spend possibly the whole cost later
Right.
on.
Well, I'm just concerned about
It's almost
And
mixed
there wasn't-
messages. I just want to make sure that we're
Oh, sure.
good, that we have healthy
Yeah.
cash.
I mean, I agree. 5 does seem like a lot, but we looked at the inventory, and we were able to show that there was a definite need. We had a lot of old buses. And on top of that, there was 6 years, I believe, Joe, is that right? That we hadn't purchased buses?
Yeah, we went 6 years with no bus purchases,
That
and
was
that
quite a long time
really
ago.
set us back really, really behind, and we've been trying to catch up ever since I've been here, actually.
And
So this-
additionally, we're not really spending money on 5 buses. I mean, yeah, we are up front, but we're getting reimbursed.
Right.
And so really, it's no different than any other year that you're buying 2 buses, because you're only spending money on 2.5 in the end. So
Right.
it's just like any other year, except for you're getting 2.5 free buses. How can you turn that down, right?
Right. Well, for me, just the estimates from PlugSmart just make good financial sense. I mean, we've tried for almost 2 decades to get new building money for a variety of different buildings, and we have not been able to achieve that. The middle school, we converted to doing repairs, put a couple $1 million in there, and now we have a life of 25, 30 years there. The high school, we're still in the process of doing some major repairs, and we'll extend the life there once the roof is done. For me, it makes good financial sense to continue with repairs of each of the buildings, and I want to be clear that our goal is to fix all three of the elementaries. But with the funds, I think we are going to have to do one at a time so that we can stay within our budget. I don't know if any of you have any additional comments on.
I guess just one of the main things that is going to play into this is, like Joe said, that idea of the costs of the asbestos in relation to this project. And how soon did you say that we might be able to get that, Joe?
I'm hoping in 2 or 3 weeks. Bill does a real nice job of turning that around. I can reach out to him actually tomorrow and kind of ask how he's doing. It's only been since Monday, but I can find out.
So that's 2 to 3 weeks from now. And what was the latest you guys, like, just for example, just the scope for Marlboro Elementary? If we did that, maybe possibly some of the work in the other ones that's priced, in there as well.
Yeah, ideally, we wanted to have an answer by the end of the month. One of the things we can do, though, is reach out to some of our abatement partners to also kind of walk the buildings with our scope and make sure that we've identified all the locations that would need to be looked at, and try and see if we can also maybe help you guys out, help Joe out, and get an answer sooner.
So if we did not make a decision for a week or two, is that going to, are you going to be able to get Marlboro done by the start of school, or what?
It's going to make everything tighter for sure. One of the other options that we could throw out there, if that's what you guys are looking at, is we could look at an option where we work on a letter of intent, because really the next 2-3 weeks, potentially, if you guys decide to move forward, a lot of that time is going to be spent us doing the engineering. So that's really what we'd be looking at. And what I'm thinking of with a letter of intent, what I mean by that is we get started immediately on engineering. And if the event, something were get delayed, we get paid for our time for the engineering that's put in. And obviously we can reutilize it at a point that you guys move forward, but at least it would allow us to continue moving down the path to ensure that we could get done by the end of summer in the event we do find that the abatement's not too bad.
What are we looking at price-wise? Let's say
If you were to hit a snag, and what would like a walkaway fee, for example, be on? What would that probably be? I'll defer to
5,000 to 10,000, just rough numbers.
Yeah.
And that would allow you to move forward with getting the paperwork done.
Yeah, kind of developing the full plan, starting to get rolling down that road. It's essentially just covering our costs for the engineering for the next, short term. It would allow us to kind of keep going down the path that in the event we find out that the abatement is within whatever budget you determine, we'd be able to move forward without skipping a beat.
Joe,
Are we looking at everything that PlugSmart has presented tonight for Marlboro?
For Marlboro, correct.
for the lighting? Yeah, I mean, we really need to decide as far as Katie needed the information for, given the go ahead on that. So we need feedback as far as that goes, what our limits are as far as what we approve.
So, Will, what was the dollar amount for Marlboro again for the lighting, the air? And
So everything that's listed there, pretty much just by Marlboro. I'll defer to Jarrett.
You said 1.6 million?
Yep.
Yeah, I'm having a hard time hearing you. I'm sorry.
I'm sorry, yeah, 1.617 million.
Okay, so maybe about 1.7. Okay. So, Treasurer, that's what's on the table, 1.7 million. How are you going to pay for that?
All right. So fiscal year 2020, we're bringing in 872,000, and
Yep.
fiscal year 2021, we'll bring in 1.7 million.
Okay.
I want to run, before we put anything in stone, I want to run this through and just make sure we're covered before we sign anything, if that's okay.
Can we sign a letter of?
Yeah, the letter of intent.
Can we do the letter of
wouldn't-
intent and then wait for the full scope of what we do at Marlboro once you run the numbers so that they can continue on their work?
And I assume we could revise, that full project and do just the roof or just the AC as well.
Yeah, I mean, ultimately, it's completely a la carte menu. The only two that I would say would be tied would be lighting with the air conditioning ad because of the drop in the electrical load. So that's the only one to keep in mind. But outside of that, anytime we do these projects, they are a la carte.
Well, if the board wants to move forward with that project, I'd recommend doing a letter of intent, getting Plug Smart the okay to kind of get the ball rolling. We'll have the treasurer do some reporting and making sure she feels comfortable. I'll get Bill Racine going, and then we can kind of take it from there if that's where the board wants to head.
I think as you're talking to the different people you're talking to, I mean, I think we need to be looking at all three buildings so that we can commit to the different projects as the money becomes available. So if we can look at the big picture of the overall project and then break it down into segments as we go, I think that would be beneficial to help us make decisions. If that's okay, Joe?
Yeah.
All right, so the letter of intent would be specific to Marlboro, is that correct?
Yes, correct. Yep.
And Katie, are you comfortable with that, Katie?
Sure. Yeah, as long as we don't have to, as long as I have time to run this through and make sure that we are, as long as I can double check some things first.
Right, and then that would give you time, or how much time do you need then to come back to us and say which projects we could choose to do?
Can you give me through like Monday?
Oh, I don't think they needed it that
Well, we
fast.
have a board meeting next Thursday. I mean, could we
Yeah,
have it
I
by-
mean, I guess
just-
it's pretty much Plug Smart. How soon would you need an answer as to our scope that we're committing to?
I'll probably pass this one off to our director of engineering. I mean, you're probably thinking by the time you'd want to order material. I know based on our schedule, I think we were looking at about from start to finish, all the engineering would be 2 to 3 weeks.
Okay. So maybe we'll just talk about it at the next, finalize
Right, so-
our part at the next board meeting. We can talk about it and all
Right,
that.
so that would get us probably to then our second April meeting, I think, before you'd have to.
It's just this Nexus piece is kind of out of the norm, and I just want to make sure we're handling.
Okay, and I want to make certain that the money that you've received, 872, will not have to be paid back under any circumstances, correct? That's all you received was the undisputed portion,
No, and we haven't received it yet, but it's
or will receive it, I'm
yeah,
sorry.
we're good with that. Yeah,
Okay.
none of that portion has been appealed.
Katie, as far as checking on the numbers with the cash flow, is there any way you could check the feasibility of via this a la carte menu? Let's say we limit that scope to, for example, the full VRF option with the heating and air conditioning, the roof, and the lights, like as a minimal, not including the gymnasium, in that price, just to see if that's doable versus the full scope of all the items at Marlboro.
The only thing we might run into, the only thing I'll comment on is the gyms. Once we decommission the steam system, we would need to do something. So we might not need to add air conditioning to the gym, but at that point, you'd need to do something in that space.
Could be as simple as putting in a new hot water coil, or depending on which, I guess in the VRF path, that wouldn't be an option. It'd probably be electric heat or some sort of dedicated heater for that. But yeah, that would need to be addressed to Will's point. If we get rid of that steam, those are currently steam coils in those units. So you wouldn't have to add cooling, but you do need to add heat, right? And so
Yep.
we need something there.
So then the AC in the gym is kind of tied into that as well, just as much as the lights are.
Yeah, I would say that, and the price there though is for full AC, full everything. To Jared's point, if for whatever reason you decided you wanted to do a scaled down scope, we could certainly dial that back. But yeah, I would say that's probably
So
correct.
for budgeting purposes, let's see here. The only thing that we could shave off here potentially would be the window and door upgrades, temporarily if we need to be able to budget it in.
Yeah, I would probably say
Well,
that.
So that 179 for Marlboro on the gym, we could look at a cheaper option there if you didn't want air conditioning. I don't have that number off, I don't have it ready, but if you told us, we don't need it.
Well, I'm just saying that, it'd be good to have that option, for the budget situation, to see what we're able to do.
Okay. But yeah, certainly, I think to answer your question, the windows and doors are not tied to any of these other scopes necessarily. So that we're a later phase. I think is what you're asking.
No heat loads based on those on the units.
I don't think it'll break you.
Okay. Speaking of that, are these variable speed,
Yes.
very frequency drives?
Yeah.
Okay.
Well, the VRF just in its nature is very.
Yeah.
And that's
But the
actually one of the
the
advantages
compressor's
is,
variable too.
Yeah, variable refrigerant flow. So, from a comfort standpoint, it's actually one of the better systems because it's always running. It's just slowing.
Oh yeah, it can run at a small capacity window unit up to whatever the
So when you think
capacity
about,
is.
especially on cooling, being able to remove humidity from a space,
Absolutely.
it's one of the best systems because it's always doing that. It's not shutting off when you build humidity.
I was just going to say that, but you said it first. So
Sorry.
that does improve exponentially the comfort because it's able to run a longer run time for that dehumidification purpose.
You got it.
And the only thing I'd add, guys, is about the roofs. I'm really concerned about the dollar amount for those roofs. I think we're going to really want to look at a better roof than a single ply type of scenario. And right now you're at a max at 645 at Marlboro. So I think we really need everything else look good. I really think we need to look at that roof.
Is that something you could come back to us with some different?
With different pricing, we could take a look at that. Yeah, but usually like I'd mentioned, kind of through the competitive bidding process.
Mhm.
I think what I'm worried about is with the core samples and with the time we spent up there. I know that they felt like they had a pretty dialed in price. So the worry I would have is if it's on the front end, if we lower that number, my fear would be we come back and then we price ourselves out of, let's say there was a preferred option that the district had that they wanted to go with.
Mhm.
That would be my only concern. I know specifically when it comes to the coal tar, I've had the various contractors tell me they've had people quit over removing it. It can cause boils and blisters on your skin as you're removing it, and it can be pretty nasty. And that's really one of the things you're seeing with the price on those 3 elementaries. I think, Joe, even you mentioned, I know with the middle school, I think that was one of the challenges you ran into when removing it.
Oh,
if
yeah.
I'm not mistaken.
Yeah,
Yeah.
no, it's tough, but I think it's going to need to be done. We're going to have to get rid of that and take it down to the deck. I think this is what we're going to have to do, just to make sure we get a good product moving forward.
I'm not sure that answered your question, though. I think the question was, could we look at other multi-layer? Is that right?
Yeah, can we get a different quote on a multi-tiered system? I guess is what I'm saying.
I would say probably at a high level. Yeah, I think we have some decent information on the roofs. We have the square footage. We have some core samples. We can certainly reach out and try and get some.
Yeah.
At least get in the ballpark.
Yeah, that would be
Find
good.
out if it's an option.
If you could do that for us, I think that would be helpful. And if it's some number that's just totally out of control, the board can look at that and make a decision. But I would just hate for us to put a single ply membrane roof on those elementaries at this point. So, but we can see what the dollars look like.
So, Joe, you're also concerned with that price?
Yeah, I think you're going to have. I think it's going to go up. Is what I'm thinking. Will can answer that probably better than I. But I'm just saying, if we're looking at 645 at Marlboro right now, if we get into a multi-ply system, that dollar might go up.
Yeah, and we can also do some evaluations for some pros and cons of each system too. So we can get a price, and then we can give some pros and cons, and even referrals of each type of system. Obviously, you have a multi-ply system. There's a number of applications of the single-ply membranes and PVC roofs that are here.
I guess my question is, would we have the option of getting separate pricing? If Joe knows of any contractors that could price us as well for that part of the project, is there any issue with that?
You mean when we go out to bid?
I mean, as far as the district having a separate contractor looking at pricing for just that portion of, this a la carte menu. I know that then your work would depend off of their work, and that's something we would need to take into consideration as well.
Yeah, and I guess you mean separate of our contract or pulled through our contract, and
I'm
then
just saying,
part of our project.
what are our options?
So, yeah, I mean, post contract, once we sign, we can pretty much work with anyone. So if you had local, again, if you wanted to get your bids, but yeah, if it's pulling through our contract, what I can do is always, like I said, get different pricing, things like that. And unless you're talking about kind of ejecting that scope altogether and treating it separate.
Yeah. What would you recommend on that, Joe?
Well, I think Will can get what we need. I'll just ask him to talk to some other vendors if needed that do more than a single ply membrane. And that's what we pay PlugSmart to do. To be honest with you, this is what's in their wheelhouse. So if we're gonna get them on board, Will can work his magic with his people that he knows and come up with some different dollars for us. I think that would be helpful.
Yeah, and we can do that pretty quickly. Get pretty quick turnaround.
Yeah, I appreciate that.
And I just had a question for either Joe or Carol, if Carol's still there. I haven't heard her lately. What's the status of our IRN number for the Marlboro building?
Yep, I'm here. We did receive information about our IRN. We will not be able to obtain our previous IRN assigned to Marlboro. We'll be assigned a new IRN.
Okay.
And we will not be able to obtain that until July at the earliest.
Okay, but you could apply now, is that correct? And they just don't give it to you till July, or?
Correct.
Okay. So you're waiting till July then to apply, or you'll just go ahead and do it and then it goes into effect in July?
We can do either one. We haven't done anything more with it since the notification because we got a little distracted with COVID-19.
Yes, I understand. Danielle, do you have any questions?
I just wanted to say thank you for the excellent report, and I agree. I just wanted to be clear that we do want to look at making, the repairs to all three buildings, and just with doing so in a costly manner. So I'm in full agreement of what we've discussed tonight. So.
Joe and Katie, you're both comfortable with moving forward with a letter of intent tonight?
I am. Yeah, I am. I think that's the direction the board is going to go. I think that keeps Will moving because I know time's of an essence to him. That keeps him moving with his engineering. It gives our treasurer time to make sure the numbers feel comfortable to her.
Yep.
And Katie, you're okay?
Yep.
And I guess I like the idea of the letter of intent that will give our other two board members, Mrs. Humphries and Dr. Mason, an opportunity to review the information, come back and ask questions, and perhaps provide additional input that we haven't thought about asking, I think.
Yeah, and my contact information was on the presentation, so certainly as questions arise, I don't know if it makes sense to funnel those through the administration, or if you want to reach out directly, it's really, let me know.
Speaking of that, is it, we can make, it's pretty much made public information. Do you want your contact information to be on there with that as well, or no?
It is now.
It already is,
I guess
right?
it's already there, right?
Well, I guess that's okay. There you go.
Well, I would hope if people had questions that they would call us,
Yeah,
not
I hope so
call
too.
Will individually. So I'm more than happy, and I talk to Will a lot with all the other projects. I'm always more than happy to take the questions and the comments and get a hold of him and get back in a good, timely manner.
What's that?
All right, then, is there a motion to authorize the superintendent to enter into a letter of intent with Plug Smart for the upgrades to Marlboro Elementary School?
So move.
Second.
Is there any discussion? Is that a sufficient, that's just what you need? Do you need
Yeah.
to add it to that?
No, what I can do is I'll work with Joe. As you mentioned, Marl, I'll send him a proposal with a letter of intent and we'll get started.
Okay.
Please call the roll.
Mrs. Gabrick,
Yes.
Mr. Hagan,
Yes.
Mrs. Stevens.
Yes.
Motion approved 3-0.
I want to thank you for your time and appreciate all your effort that you put in there, and we look forward to working with you.
Much appreciated. Likewise. Thank you very much for your time.
Thank you guys so much. We appreciate it.
Get used to not shaking people's hands. It's really uncomfortable. Yeah.
So we'll continue on with the rest of our meeting. Is there a motion to approve the minutes of the meeting for the regular meeting, March 5th, 2020?
So moved.
Second.
Is there any discussion? Please call the roll.
Mrs. Gabrick,
Yes.
Mr. Hagan,
Yes.
Mrs. Stevens.
Yes.
Motion approved 3-0.
Under the financial resolutions, is there a motion to approve the financial reports and overview of receipts and expenditures for the period ending February 29th, 2020, as presented and marked as Exhibit P and Exhibit Q?
So moved.
Second.
Is there any discussion?
Here you'll see the bank reconciliation, which you're used to seeing, and summary of all funds, which is the FinSum report. You can note that food service has been trending down over the past couple of years. Well, you can't really see that over the past couple of years, but I can just tell you that. I've noticed that, and I'm studying it to help come up with a plan to turn it over, to figure out how we can turn it around. Additionally, the current viral issue will likely intensify the strain on this fund, and we'll not know the impact until after this is all over. So I kind of wanted to mention that. And also then you have the check register. And I don't know, just one thing that was pointed out to me, we had a increase in a water bill due to a leak at the pool building. Lisa pointed that out to me. So
Leak where?
at the pool building, she said. Joe, did that?
It was in our maintenance building.
Was it significant, or just over a long period of time?
It was significant. I'm not sure how long it was before we caught it.
Is there any systems that they can put in to kind of monitor the water use to alert us when we have stuff like that to avoid? I mean, how significant was the additional cost because of that?
Yeah, I don't remember. Do you remember, Katie?
I think the check was around. I'd have to look at the deviation. She just pointed it out to me that it was higher than normal. But I'd have to look at what the actual deviation was.
Okay. Well, depending on how significant that is, we might want to look at, what type of monitoring systems there are for the water, so that they've got all kinds of technology nowadays that'll pick up usage patterns, especially in larger patterns, and there's automatic shut off and or at least alerts, so that we can have someone become aware of it.
I mean, it was. I think it was just a little higher than normal. It wasn't like
Okay.
I just try to point out fun facts, so it's not so boring. Because
I just know in general, city water, you have a toilet running and your bill triples. So,
Yeah, I was.
That's true. That is true. Yeah.
Do you have any other discussion, Katie, on this, on
Um,
these items?
those are the only things that were of interest for this month.
Anyone else have any questions? Please call the roll.
Mrs. Gabrick,
Yes.
Mr. Hagan,
yes.
Mrs. Stevens.
Yes.
Motion approved 3-0.
Is there a motion to approve the amended appropriations as presented and marked as Exhibit R?
So moved.
Second.
Is there any discussion?
These are just the amendments for the purchase of the buses. There was an increase in appropriations for the amount that will be attributed to the rebate in 001. We just have to budget for that because it's going to be an increase in expenditures, but then it'll be put back as a reduction of expenditure whenever we get the money back. And an increase in appropriations for the remainder of the bus purchase in 003, just because, as I had said, when we made the purchase, Tammy hadn't budgeted. I think she only budgeted for like a bus and a half. So I had to add just a little bit more in the budget. Now that's not actually cash, that's budget. There's a difference between the two.
Okay. And when will we be projected to get the rebate back on that?
I believe it's up to 90 days after the disposal of the buses.
Right.
I anticipate no later than fall, based on what I'm being told.
And what is the disposal of the buses involved, Joe?
I don't know all those facts, to be honest with you. I can ask Mr. Sickles to see exactly what that means. I mean, the term's put out of commission, but I don't know exactly what that means. But I can ask that question to Sherry.
Okay.
So, Katie, my understanding that the $223,590 for the buses came out of the permanent improvement. Then the $214,000 came out of the general fund, so it'll be replenished back to the general fund when you receive it.
Yes, the 214, that's where the check will go, the 49%. That'll go back against that in the general fund. And this is all budgeted funds. It's not actually cash. It's just budgets that we set. Some people refer to it as fake money. I mean, that's a terrible thing to say, but I mean, it's your budget. It's, you're not actually dealing in cash when you're dealing with a budget.
Right. You're allocating it to be spent when the buses arrive, correct?
It's your goals for the year. So it's just something we have to do.
Okay. Any further questions? Please call the roll.
Mrs. Gabrick,
Yes.
Mr. Hagan,
Yes.
Mrs. Stevens.
Yes.
Motion approved 3-0.
Is there a motion to approve the resolution accepting the amounts and rates as determined by the Budget Commission and authorizing the necessary tax levies and certifying them to the county auditor as presented and marked Exhibit S? Is there a motion?
Katie, could you go over that real quick?
I need a motion first.
Oh, sorry. Oh, so moved.
And a second?
Second.
Is there any
Okay.
discussion?
I can
ask. Sorry.
There you go.
probably want to know what these are. We do these annually. I did these in Cuyahoga Falls too. The county sends these to us. These are levies and rates and estimated yields for the year from the county. So they're listing our levies out and then what they're going to yield for us. And then the board and we certify them. They're at full value as they stand for public utility. So what that means is that they've listed the public utility, the Nexus money at full value, times the tax rate, and the current expectation is that it will be lowered. So the county has it at full value, but because of the appeal and everything, they're expecting it to be lowered. So and that's all verbiage that I got straight from the county. But hopefully that helps you understand what it is you're approving. It's basically your levies and what they're gonna yield.
You good with it?
Yeah.
Any other discussion? Please call the roll.
Mrs. Gabrick,
Yes.
Mr. Hagan,
Yes.
Mrs. Stevens.
Yes.
Motion approved 3-0.
And Joe, I'll let you do the announcements in case there's any changes to these.
Yeah, no, they change about every day, but I just want to thank our parents and our students, all of our employees for everyone working together, kind of getting us through this new world of online learning. And we'll continue to send updates on my days with Mr. Knoll and parents and communications with our principals as far as newsletters go. So we'll try to keep the lines of communication going as information comes to us. Tomorrow does end the third 9 weeks, and I know our principals have been sending out information to our parents and kids about making sure you get makeup work in a timely manner. And then our spring break will continue as scheduled. Hopefully by then we'll have some more guidance on kind of what the rest of the year looks like as well moving forward.
Thank you. One announcement I would like to make is I received a call today that OSBA is offering a webinar tomorrow at 4 o'clock to go over the House Bill 197 and how it impacts education. You just have to go onto the OSBA website and sign up. So any of us, and I believe any of our administrators, can sign up for that if you have time or interest in that. 4 o'clock. And then it's going to be recorded. So if you can't do it tomorrow, it'll be recorded. You can do it later.
Mr. Hagan, I got an answer to your question thanks to the great use of technology.
Excellent. What's your question?
Remember the one about what's out of commission being on a bus? They're taking the one location, the frame is cut,
For
the
disposal.
hole drilled in the engine block, so they know that will not be put back on the road. That's what
Okay, so it's similar to the Cash for Clunkers program we had a few years back.
one might say that.
I didn't hear that. It kind of came in muffled here on this side.
As far as what happens?
Oh, no, just in the beginning when you were speaking. So
Oh.
I was just reiterating that it's like the Cash for Clunkers
Okay.
program.
All right.
Okay.
And I'd
Thank
also
you.
like to take a moment and thank Mr. Noah and our technology department for getting this meeting set up. It's greatly appreciated, all the efforts put into getting this set up for tonight.
Mhm.
Our next board meeting, I don't believe we have a special meeting for next week. I think just a regular meeting, April 2nd, 2020 at 7 p.m. And Mr. Noel, here at the DLZ, is that the most convenient place for this?
Yeah, I think that's
At
a
this
good
time?
place. If that's okay with everybody, we'll just kind of leave the setup as it is.
And,
Go from
and do we have to take any provisions at this time in case board members would prefer to participate the same way you guys are, given that we have the House Bill 197? Or is that something, Joe, that we will have to take action on at a future meeting to be able to do that? Or
Well, I think we'll get some guidance on that, and I think that webinar tomorrow will be helpful.
Okay.
But I think we definitely want to kind of keep this game plan kind of up and running, for the time being here. Definitely.
Okay.
Is there a motion to adjourn?
So moved.
Second.
Discussion? Please call the roll.
Mrs. Gabrick,
Yes.
Mr. Hagan,
Yes.
Mrs. Stevens.
Yes.
Motion approved 3-0.
Good night, everybody.
Good night.
Be
Thank
safe.
you.
Good night. Be safe.
Good night.
Good night.
Are we still streaming?